What's going on, YouTube? Welcome to episode 14 of the U.S.S. Enterprise D tutorial. I'm Zero Elite, and I just want to thank you very much for tuning in today's episode. And if you haven't, please don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button, helping me in supporting the channel. I can't thank you enough for that. Today, we're going to be continuing on our work on the lower hull of the Enterprise, and specifically, now that we've got our shape set in stone, we're going to add the curve in, because I'm sure some of you are probably thinking like, well, like it's not necessarily looking right in the front because it's not supposed to be flat. And you'd be 100% right. It's supposed to curve backwards, go at an angle backwards. And we're going to get that set up so this way, when we do the next episode next week, we'll actually do the outline for the back end, and so we can fully fill this thing in and really get rocking on it. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump right into this, because we got kind of a long one today, 32-minute episode. But we're going to be starting from the top and working our way down, and just taking a row off as we go and progressively bringing that back. This was one of the reasons why we extended this out, going all the way around. So if you still haven't done that, you need to go back to episode 13 at the end when I counted out how many blocks we need to build that out. You need to do that so this way you have this extra build behind you, so you're not going to have to be backtracking as far as the angle that we're going to be going at, because we're going to be shaving some of this off so we can really develop that angle that the Enterprise D should have, and not really doing anything super crazy here. Just every single time we go down, we're just going to continue the arch going down, just going one back further. So now again, we're just going to go one back, delete everything in front of that. I believe when we get right before this middle, we're actually going to have to add more, because I didn't even make this long enough. Because I thought that the curve wasn't going to end up being this long, but I wasn't really gauging it out the way I should have. But it is what it is. We'll get there. All right, we're not looking too bad. I remember I was kind of sitting on this for a little bit because I wasn't sure how exactly I was going to do this, but this surprisingly worked out pretty well. We are actually, before we're done with today's episode, we're going to come back and readjust the top of the lower hull, but the outline that we have is going to remain intact. We're just going to kind of change up how it looks a little bit, but you'll see what I mean when we get towards the end of the episode. Yeah, see, we're only going to be able to cut in like 2 more rows now before we're going to have to start adding stuff behind the rows that we have now, because we're really down to the last one. So I'm going to hop over to the right side here and do the same thing that we just did on the left, just to get caught up. And then I'm going to show you what to do here. We're essentially just going to have to keep the same palette that we have right now and just extend it, or the outline I should say, and just extend it back once we get down to this point right here. Because obviously we won't be able to cut anymore, because we're pretty much reached the end of the line here. I don't necessarily remember why I added these dark gray blocks here. Oh, I do remember, because we're not going to be using anything going forward on that line. So pretty much at this point going backwards, or I should say everything going in front of this line, we're going to be deleting it once we redo the bottom line. But you honestly, to be perfectly honest with you, you don't need to even necessarily add this line that I'm adding right here. We got a couple more rows to do, and then we'll be caught up with the right side. I got two more to do. All right, perfect. Now we're caught up. I'm just adding a couple extra blocks, and then to keep the curve maintained, and then everything in front of the curve, we're just going to be deleting that because we don't need it. As long as we maintain the curve and the shape as we're going down, we're in good shape. All right, let's bang out this underside. Now this 3-strip bar, you can see that I didn't make it continue to curve with every block. I had that strip. I'm basically counting that 1-for-1 with the single blocks. And then basically that C piece there, you can see that's flat. I'm basically trying to determine if I want it to curve back. If it doesn't look good, we could always switch back to what we had. All right, that looks pretty good. So we're going to hop over to the other side and we're going to repeat the same process. It does kind of suck though, because this is taking a little bit longer than I expected per episode to do this, but these sections that I'm building out, there's really no way for me to do it other than doing it live, because I feel like this is a complicated enough section of the build that you guys will need to see what I'm doing in order to be able to replicate this. I was able to get away with a lot with the saucer, because when we're adding the layers, you really only need to see me or count with me as I'm doing that, and you can do that yourselves. But with this, this is a little bit different, because a little bit more free building as opposed to sticking to a set template. I mean, we're technically working off of a template because we have the outline of our lower hull, but the curve of it and the way that I'm making a curve, we're kind of winging that as we go down. Because we have some parts here that I was going to make straight, but then I decided to curve them out. And I'm just doing it in sections. I'm counting each progression row as the next row to cut inwards. All right. That looks pretty good. And it matches. All right, so now we're going down and in once. Now we're going to go back again with the cut. Maintain that curve. Doing the same thing. Now remember when we did this in yesterday's episode, doing patterns of 3. So as long as you don't mess that up, you're good. You want to make sure that every single row you're going back one to maintain that curve. All right, we're just continuing this on. We're just going to keep this going until we get down to the bottom. Because the very bottom row, I think, is going to be a little bit longer than 3. I think it ends up being like 4 or 5 wide. We got 2 more rows to do on this side from what it looks like, and then we got to go to the other side. And as long as you're looking at what you have built in front of you, that's kind of your guide, because it's literally building it in the same space, just further back. In every single row that I go down, I'm going back by 1 to maintain the curve. And this isn't even the hardest part of the build. We're still working on the neck. We have to pan back to that to fix that up. And then we're going to have to build the deflector dish, and that's going to be a lot of fun. Hopefully you can tell that I'm being sarcastic when I say that, because that was hands down the most challenging part of the build next to the neck. And even when I have going on here with the neck, it doesn't look horrible. I'm just not completely happy with it. And if I remember right, I'm pretty sure that the neck sat like this for quite a little while. Even in the original teaser trailer that I had up, I actually took that down actually, and I don't have it up anymore. But it sat like that for a while. So now everything going forward on this new outline that we have, you're going to delete that. So all that access down here, we're going to get rid of that. And we're also going to get rid of the front of this base here, because we don't necessarily need this anymore. This was just a template to start with. Give us an idea of the size that we were going for. Not going to worry about deleting all of it just yet. We'll come back to that when we start to really wireframe out the back end. Let's get some more lights in here so we can zoom out and take a look at this thing. You have to envision it, but that's definitely the curve now. That's this front part here. It's starting to look more like the Enterprise D. All right. Still got a little bit of time left in today's episode to get some stuff done. About 19 or so minutes. So now we're just going to layer this out to add additional rows to make them match up with this bottom row. As we go up, we're going to have to add more, but this very bottom row here is only 3 long, counting the very first. And I'm going to do that going all the way around until we get up top. So now you can see that my whole top and side here have been filled in, but the very bottom row here is 3. Remember, it's curving backwards, so as you're building up, your back end here should match the length of the bottom down here. But obviously in the front they won't, because of the curve. So you may need to pause this in order to pick that back up, but after you have, then we can continue on here. And I believe we're going to get ready to start reworking this top end here. So to show you where we're going to be deleting from. So from the neck, we count 1, 2, 3, 4. So the first single row, I believe we're going to be deleting everything after that. Well, everything from this row going up to the neck. Because we're going to be redoing this top part here. I'm not necessarily sure at this point, so just hang on a second before you start deleting stuff. But I'm kind of thinking that's what I want to do here. Yeah, because at first I think I was trying to take off some of this front row and rebuild the front, but I'm pretty sure this whole section here after this first one, we're going to end up taking that off. We're actually just above that. Just be sure, hang on a second, and I'll tell you exactly what to delete. But I'm pretty certain everything that's above that first single row, we're going to be deleting that until we get up to the neck. When you get up to the neck, you want to be sure that you're not deleting any of the neck, just of the hull lines that we've added so far for the lower hull. You see it's gone down by 1, so that's your indicator to know anything that's above this is the neck, so we're not deleting that. Clean that up, make sure our patterns are correct. All right, and now I'm going to do the same thing on this side. I'm going to delete everything that's above the first single row. Now, if you want to go ahead and do this with me, you can do that on both sides. So I'm 100% certain we're going to be following through this, and that's the point that we're going to be rebuilding from. Don't remember off the top of my head if I go down a row, but I'm pretty sure it's either on this first single one or after. Nope, I'm taking off the single one too. Okay, good. So I was right. So we're also going to have to hop over to the left side of the ship and take off that very first single row, but nothing below it. If you're deleting anything below that first single row, then you made a mistake and you need to go back and do it again. This is also something that I talk about all the time. Make extra backups of your save as you're going. So this way, if you do make a mistake, you can go back and you can correct whatever mistake you have. I can't tell you how many additional saves I have of my world on Minecraft, but I can tell you that I at least have 120 of them. No joke. And that's just because every single time I get on here, I make a new save. Every single time I build, I make an additional save. So I always have at least 2. And so I've got a progression system from going back at this point to at the midpoint on the Cerritos up until now. But that's good because if you do make a mistake, you can go back and you can retrieve whatever mistake that you had made. Just make sure that if you do that and you go back to a previous save, make a copy of that so this way you have an extra just in case. So anyway, now you should have something that looks kind of like this. We've deleted everything that's just north of our first single row of blocks. You should have a little bit of gap here because we're going to rebuild this top section here. I forgot I need to delete this first single row on this side. All right, we're in good shape now. And at this point, I'm trying to figure out which way I want to go about it. Um, you see, I'm going to go, I believe I'm going to go in like a pattern of either 2 or 3 and going outward with the cut. So every 2, I'm going to progress forward. That might work. But wait a second to do that, because I might end up changing that to 3, because I don't know if that's going to come out too far, because we don't want to go in front of the neck. It needs to, the 2 sides need to be able to meet. Now in this row I'm going 3. So far we've got 1, 2, 3 rows of 2 going with the cut, and now the next 2 rows are 3. We're going to do the same thing on this side. We're going to go out 1. Now in the third, after the third, then it's going to be 3. 2 rows of 3. Actually, the last row of 3, I'm going to make that into 4. Now this top part is going to be flat, but trust me, as we go in, we'll blend it in and it'll look right. And we did a single line on each side. Looking pretty good so far. Let's check that out. That doesn't look too bad. So that was something I noticed with the Enterprise D, that this area, this area curves. So that's something that I'm trying to replicate. And also when we make it 3D, we're going to be layering it, adding layers to the bottom side going inward, and on the top side going up and back to make it 3-dimensional. But this very first row here is very important, or this outline here. This whole section, I've talked about this now for 2 episodes, is very important because this is dictating stuff that we're going to be doing later on. We're trying to build this out correctly so we can plan ahead, essentially. To see what it's going to look like, I'm going to do a row of half slabs that's going across the front, because I'm trying to get an idea of exactly how this is going to look as I'm adding additional rows to it. So doing the half slabs will just kind of give me a little bit of an idea of how that's going to go. Which that's going to be an issue right there, making those 2 sides connect like that. So that's going to be something that we're going to have to address later on. So whatever template that I go with is going to have to be something that can blend those 2 areas in together. And now we're going to go on the top side and go with a cut with half slabs. Because we want this to start progressively curving upward. Oh, made a full block. Got to fix that. So you can get kind of an idea of what I'm going for right there and how that's going to go up. Now we're going to go up one more. Now this row we can do full blocks, which will be a little bit easier as far as snapping goes. But every single row, now as we get to this part here, we're going to have to do half slabs going all the way back to our stopping line. So we're going to bring this back. So you can get an idea of how it's going to progressively start to curve upward as we add in each row. It's going to be higher and higher, but along the sides here, it's not going to be that way going all the way down. We're basically designing it to curve kind of like in an oval as we get closer to the neck. Doesn't look terrible so far. Don't know if that's necessarily going to work though. Might have to make some minor adjustments to it, but that's the idea behind it anyway. Now, before I get too far into it, want to go over to the other side and repeat that same process, because remember, we're sticking with that rule. If you do one thing on one side, do it on the other while it's fresh in your brain to eliminate mistakes. You can see, obviously, I'm not going all the way back just yet. I'm only going like a couple of rows, and that's because I'm not 100% set that what I'm doing here is going to work. I'm basically just building out a template to see how this is going to go, pretty much, and that if I'm going to like this enough to stick to it. Um, which we are ultimately going to do. I don't remember if it's going to be this exactly, but I do know that what we're doing right here is definitely going to be the base for how the front end of this is going to go. I just don't remember off the top of my head if I keep this exactly or if I make some changes to it, but this is definitely going to be the idea behind it. Because from the side there, it definitely has that curve right there, which is what we want. That looks good. That looks pretty good. So we can bring the neck all the way down and even make it cut in one more. And it'll look like one piece, just how it's supposed to look. We'll blend all that in together. Yeah, no, this was pretty complicated figuring this out. When I started working on the Enterprise D, I really didn't know what I was getting myself into because the shapes that this thing has, and I've talked about this before, is that it's Enterprise D is very iconic, and there's certain areas, like especially where we're at now in the lower hull, um, the front section of it, it's can't mess it up because if you do, you've got to redo sections of it until you get it right because Enterprise D has such a distinct look to it that you really can't vary from it. And if you do, then it's going to stand out like a sore thumb. I think all things considered, the only section of the ship that I was not fully happy with was the back sides of the neck. It's not a perfect curve on how it should be with the Enterprise D, but I think it's as close as what I can get it. This front part here, we are going to redo that, but the sides here, it kind of swooshes a little bit more like an S shape, the top part of an S. So mine is not perfect in that area, but I still think that what I have um, is better than what I've seen other people do. It's a lot better, and I'm very happy and proud of what I've come up with here because this thing kicked my butt for so long figuring out some of these sections of the ship. As you can see, this area that we've been on here, we've been working on it for a couple of days now, and I was just willing to put myself through it and just kept working at it until I got what I wanted. And what I'm getting at here is that when you're doing your own builds yourselves, you're going to be faced with these same situations. My best advice when you're presented with things like that is just don't give up. Just keep working on it. And if it stresses you out or if you get stuck, you're having builder block, start working on something else or step away from it and come back with it with a fresh set of eyes and tackle it again. And eventually you'll come up with what you want. Um, but yeah, no, I mean, definitely very happy with how the Enterprise D is coming along so far. Not progressing as fast as I'd like to, but these are vital steps that I have to show, and I don't want anybody getting lost in this build. And I'm really trying to make a point to show everything that I'm doing here, so this way everybody can stay with me and build this thing. For those of you that come across my channel and want to build your own Enterprise D, maybe you're not exactly sure on what to do. Or maybe you have built ships, but maybe you're not used to building something this big, or you want a reference of something to go off of. Really going to be offering you a platter here on content for the Enterprise D because once we finish the outside, we're going to be venturing our way on the interior, and that's going to be a puzzle in itself, making everything kind of fit together. It's something that I'm currently working on right now. And I've been taking intermediate breaks in between, not only to come back at it with a fresh set of eyes, but also to kind of recharge my batteries too, because everybody needs to take a break once in a while on here, and I recommend that for everybody because eventually you will burn yourself out. But I do love the shipbuilding on here. I used to actually really enjoy building models and painting them and things like that, but the place that I'm living now, I really don't have that luxury where I can do that. I mean, I could build the models, but I can't paint them and do the things I used to love to do. There's just nowhere for me to do it, and this is the next best thing for me. And if you're creative and you like doing stuff like that, you'd be surprised. Building on Minecraft is very gratifying in itself because it's not easy building with blocks. You know, it's really not. You kind of got to figure out a way to make these shapes work based off of a pixel design, pretty much. You see, now we're just blending in the neck with the lower hull that I've added on, kind of get an idea of how that's going to look. Only deleting the half slabs and the full blocks where I need to connect the neck to the lower hull. I just panned over real quick to look at the left side just to make sure that what I'm about to do on the right side matches. Okay. We will have to do some work on this area here, especially like we're going to redo parts of this front neck here, but it doesn't look terrible what we have so far, and it's a good base to go off of. But it's very important that we got this top part done, and we'll be tweaking it a little bit more. But one of the reasons why I'm wanting to do this now before we build out their back end or our outline, because this line here, this very last row, is going to dictate the cuts as we're going down. And if you want to see what I mean, go back and watch my full teaser of the Enterprise D and pay attention to this area of the ship, how it progresses as we go backwards. It makes progressive cuts as it's going down, and it's just row to row. but it's all matching up, going with the cut with a set pattern, just like you've what I've been known to do with having my patterns on here. But this is very vital and why I've waited up until this point to really build that out, because this is going to be so important to when we're building out the back end, the top section, and even the bottom section too. This is so vital to the whole lower hull of the ship. But this is stuff that we're really going to be that's going to be paying off for us. So you think of it like this: that we're putting the prep work down now for stuff that we're going to be doing later. So this way, when we start, after we get the wireframe done of the back end of the outline, it's really just going to be a matter of connecting the dots, so to speak. And I'll show you what I mean when we get there. But I think that's going to wrap us up today. I'm pretty sure I've gone a little bit over 32 minutes at this point, the way I've been jabbering on. But I think that's going to wrap us up. We're at a really good place right now, and I'm really happy with the way the ship's looking. She's starting to look like the Enterprise D, and that's the important thing. I still have a ton of work to do to get there, and I got to clean off some of the rough edges, but we will get there. Anyway, I just want to thank you all again for tuning in today's episode, and everyone that takes the time to watch these episodes, comment on them, like and subscribe. If you like this video, let me know. If you didn't like this video, let me know. If you have questions, let me know. I'd love to hear from you. Um, and if you can help me out, hit that like and subscribe button, helping me in supporting the channel. I can't thank you enough for that. Also, new subscribers, don't forget, you can always catch my new videos of Starship Evo, typically dropping on Mondays. My Minecraft videos dropping Tuesdays through Fridays, or excuse me, Tuesdays through Thursdays. But anyway, that's going to wrap it up for me. I just want to thank you all again for tuning in today's episode. I hope everybody has a happy and safe weekend, and I will catch you on next week's episode.